My wife said she married down and that everyone could see she was out of my league. Until I let her friends discover I paid for every girl's trip. People always tell you that marriage is about compromise, respect, and partnership. But no one really prepares you for what it feels like when the person you married, the person you trusted with your heart, your life, and your future, looks you in the eyes and basically says you were never good enough for them. That's what happened to me one night, and it changed everything. It started innocently enough. My wife and I had been invited to dinner with a couple of her coworkers and their partners. It wasn't the first time we'd gone out with them. I'd met them at a few happy hours and holiday events before, but this was one of those sit-down, semi-formal dinners where people are dressed nicely and trying to impress one another. We arrived at the restaurant, one of those trendy upscale places where you have to book weeks in advance. I don't usually care for those kinds of spots, but my wife lives for them. She's the type who thrives on ambience, on people turning heads when she walks in, on carefully staging her martini glass for an Instagram story before she even takes a sip. Me? I'm quieter. I listen more than I talk, and I don't feel the need to prove anything. I'm comfortable in my own skin, and honestly, I've always been fine letting her shine in social situations. She likes attention, and I never minded. But that night was different. The wine was flowing, the conversations were light, and for a while, things were fine. I contributed where I could, but as usual, she carried most of the social weight, cracking jokes, telling stories, exaggerating details for effect. People laughed. I smiled. I was happy to sit back. Then it happened. One of her coworkers' partners, a nice guy, probably a little buzzed, leaned forward with a grin and said to me, "Man, you're lucky. Your wife's gorgeous, smart, and fun. You must have hit the jackpot." I chuckled politely, ready to agree. But before I could say a word, my wife raised her glass, smirked, and said, "Lucky? Please, let's be real here. I married down. Everyone can see I'm out of his league." The table erupted into nervous laughter. Her friends glanced at each other, unsure how to react. Some chuckled along awkwardly, others looked down at their plates. I forced a smile, but inside, my stomach dropped. Now, I've heard plenty of jokes in my time. Teasing, banter, even the occasional insult and jest. But this wasn't one of those times. This wasn't a harmless laugh. There was a sharpness in her tone, a truth hidden in her words that cut deeper than she probably realized. I didn't say much for the rest of the night. I played along, acted as though nothing was wrong, but the comment echoed in my mind over and over. Married down. Out of his league. It wasn't the words themselves that hurt. It was the way she believed them. Later, when we got home, I brought it up. I asked her why she said it. Her response? She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. It's just banter. Everyone knows it's true, anyway." She said it so casually, like it was nothing. Like I was supposed to laugh it off too. I didn't fight. I didn't yell. I didn't even argue. I just stood there for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. They probably can." That was all I said. And then I walked away. But inside, something shifted. Because here's what she didn't realize. While she was so busy convincing everyone, including herself, that she was out of my league, she had built that entire illusion on something she never acknowledged. Me. The truth was, her glamorous lifestyle, the one her friends envied and admired, wasn't hers at all. The designer bag she flaunted on Instagram, paid for by me. The girls' trips to Cancun, Miami, and New York, every flight, every hotel, every cocktail, booked under my name, charged to my accounts. The weekend spa retreats, the shopping sprees, the new wardrobe every season, all of it funded by my late nights at work, by my overtime hours, by the freelance projects I took on when I should have been resting. For years, I told myself it didn't matter, that she was happy, that appearances weren't worth the fight. If she wanted her friends to believe she was living some independent, glamorous life, what harm did it do? But that night, something changed. It wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't just about trips or handbags. It was about respect. And I realized, in that moment, she didn't respect me. Not really. Not as a partner. Not as someone she owed honesty to. Not even as the person who was quietly carrying the financial weight of her image. She had started to believe her own lie. She genuinely thought she was out of my league, while living in a world I built for her. So, I didn't argue. I didn't confront her again. But in my silence, I made a decision. If she wanted to act like she was out of my league, then maybe it was time to remind her just how much of her league was built on my shoulders. And soon enough, the people she wanted so desperately to impress were going to see the truth. For a couple of weeks after that dinner, I kept things quiet. On the surface, nothing seemed different. I still went to work, paid the bills, handled the mortgage, and let her plan her next girls' trip. She strutted around the house in her designer heels, posed in front of mirrors, and posted endless stories captioned, "Living my best life." But underneath, I was making moves. First, I went through the bank statements, the credit card charges, and the receipts. I organized everything into neat little folders. One for vacations, one for handbags, one for spa weekends, one for brunches that somehow cost over $500 a pop. It wasn't hard. I'd been the one covering the costs all along. Then, I did something I knew would sting. Her birthday was coming up, and she was planning a big brunch with her friends, about 20 of them, most of whom I'd met at one point or another. She had reserved a private room at one of the fanciest spots downtown. I didn't object. In fact, I told her I'd cover it. She lit up like a kid on Christmas. "Really? You'll pay for the brunch? That's going to be so expensive." I smiled. "Of course. Anything for you." But what I didn't tell her was that the expense was going to be something other than champagne towers and lobster omelets. Because I had already spoken to the restaurant manager. And instead of handing over my card like usual, I gave him a different kind of envelope, one with printed statements, highlighted charges, and a note that read, "Delivered to the table after dessert." The morning of the brunch, she spent hours getting ready. Hair, makeup, the newest designer dress she'd splurged on with my money. She looked like she was heading to the Met Gala. When we walked into the restaurant, she beamed as her friends squealed and complimented her. "Queen, look at you, always glowing. Seriously, how do you do it? What's your secret?" And just like always, she played along. She laughed, waved her hand dismissively, and said, "Oh, you know me. I just make it happen." I sat quietly at the edge of the long table, sipping my coffee, smiling as the mimosas flowed and the food kept coming. I watched her bask in the glow of admiration, watched her feed them stories about how hard she worked to treat herself, and how independence was everything. When dessert came, a towering cake with sparklers, she stood up and made a little speech. "I just want to say how grateful I am for all of you," she said, glass raised. "This life, these moments, it's all about surrounding yourself with the right people. People who inspire you to live big, to never settle, to keep pushing yourself to the next level. That's what I do, and that's why I'll never apologize for being a little extra." Her friends applauded, clinked glasses, and cheered. And then the manager walked in with the envelope. "Sir," he said, nodding at me, "here's what you asked me to deliver." I stood up slowly, took the envelope, and placed it in the center of the table. "What's that?" my wife asked, blinking. "Just a little transparency exercise," I said. "You like to talk about independence, about how you make it happen. So I figured your friends should see exactly how it all happens." Her smile faltered. "What are you doing?" I opened the envelope and spread out the papers. "This," I said calmly, "is the last 3 years of your lifestyle. Every handbag, every vacation, every spa weekend, every single brunch like this one. Paid for. Not by your independence, not by your hustle, not by your secret glow-up fund. Paid for by me." The table went silent. Forks froze midair. A couple of her friends leaned in, scanning the highlighted charges. Her best friend muttered, "Wait, this Cancun trip? You didn't pay for that." Another said, "But you told us you saved for months for that Chanel bag." I shrugged. "Nope, that was me. All of it was me. Every time she showed up here bragging about how she could afford it, that was my overtime, my weekends, my projects. She wasn't out of my league. She was living in mine." The color drained from her face. She stammered, "You're humiliating me." "No," I interrupted. "You did that yourself when you told everyone I was beneath you. When you looked at me, your own husband, and said you married down. You wanted them to believe you were better than me. Now they know the truth." For a long, awkward moment, nobody spoke. Then, slowly, the whispers started. One friend whispered, "That's kinda gross." Another said, "Wow, so all those posts were fake flexes?" A third muttered, "I knew it didn't add up." She looked around the table, desperately trying to recover. "No, no, you guys don't understand. He wanted to, he offered to. But the damage was done. The admiration was gone. The illusion had shattered. Her carefully constructed identity, the glamorous, self-made woman her friends envied, crumbled right there in front of them. I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms, and said quietly, "Out of my league. You never even had one without me." When we got home, she unleashed hell, screaming, crying, calling me every name in the book. She accused me of betrayal, of trying to ruin her. But I stayed calm. "No," I said simply. "I just told the truth. The same truth you never respected enough to admit." That night, she slept in the guest room. And for the first time in years, I slept like a baby. Because the mask was off, and she knew it. Update 1. The next morning, I woke up to a buzzing phone. Dozens of notifications, texts, DMs, group chat pings. Some from mutual friends, others from people I barely knew. All of them carried the same theme. "Dude, what happened yesterday?" Apparently, her friends couldn't wait to talk. Screenshots of the receipts had circulated overnight. People were already sharing them in group chats, dissecting every dollar spent. By noon, her carefully crafted social image was in freefall. At first, she tried to fight it. She posted an Instagram story, a shaky selfie with tears in her eyes, claiming I had ambushed her on her birthday and weaponized money against her. She wrote paragraphs about emotional manipulation, about how men use finances to control women. And for a second, I thought maybe it would work. Maybe people would sympathize. But then the comments started rolling in. "Wait, so were you lying about paying for your trips? Didn't you say you bought your Birkin with your own money? Girl, I was there when you swore you saved 6 months for that Miami weekend." Her own friends, the same ones who used to hype her up nonstop, were the ones poking holes in her story. One even commented, "We literally saw the receipts. Stop lying." That was the beginning of the end. For days, I watched her spiral. She stopped going to brunches. She avoided her group chats. The same girls who once screamed "Queen" at her posts now left her on read. A couple even messaged me privately, apologizing for ever believing her hype. Meanwhile, at home, things were icy. She swung between two extremes. 1 hour she'd rage, screaming about how I embarrassed her, about how I ruined her friendships. The next hour, she'd go quiet and try to play nice, cooking dinner, asking about my day, even suggesting we plan a trip, just the two of us. But I wasn't stupid. I knew what it was. Survival. She didn't suddenly love me again. She didn't suddenly respect me. She just realized her world outside of me was crumbling, and I was the only stability left. One night, as I sat in the living room with a beer, she came in wearing one of the expensive dresses I'd bought her. She perched on the arm of my chair, tried to run her hand across my chest, and said softly, "You know, we could just move past this. Forget what happened. Start over. Nobody else matters, right? Just you and me." I looked at her hand, then at her face. "Funny," I said quietly. "You didn't think that when you told me I was beneath you, or when you paraded around telling your friends you were self-made." Her smile faltered. "You don't get it," I continued. "You didn't just lie to them. You lied to me. Every time you rolled your eyes at me, every time you acted like my hard work was nothing, you were living off me while pretending you were above me. And you enjoyed it." She pulled her hand back, glaring. "So what? You think you're better than me now? You think they respect you more than me? You're pathetic. You had to humiliate me to feel like a man." I stood up slowly, setting my beer on the table. "No," I said. "I didn't humiliate you. I revealed you. You humiliated yourself." I walked upstairs, leaving her seething in the living room. That night, I emailed a lawyer. Not because I was rushing toward divorce that very moment, but because I knew there was no coming back from this. Not really. The trust was gone, the respect was gone, and the truth was out. The next week, I noticed something else. Her credit card was declined at a boutique. She stormed home, furious. "Why did my card get declined? Did you forget to pay the bill?" I looked at her calmly. "No, I cut the card off. If you want to keep up this lifestyle, you'll need to do it on your own now." She exploded. "Are you kidding me? You can't just do that." "Actually," I said, handing her the statement, "I can. It's my account, my money. I'll cover the basics, mortgage, utilities, groceries. But the extras? The handbags, the spa weekends, the girls' trips? That's on you now." The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in years, she looked small. Not glamorous, not untouchable, just small. Within days, she started selling some of her designer stuff online. The same things she once flaunted proudly on Instagram now sat in shipping boxes on the porch. One by one, the symbols of her independence disappeared. Her friends didn't rush to rescue her. If anything, they distanced themselves even more. Nobody wants to be the sidekick in someone else's exposed lie. And me? I found peace in the quiet. I stopped financing her ego, stopped apologizing for not being enough. Because I realized something powerful. I had been enough all along. She was the one who couldn't measure up. Final update. After that night when I cut off her credit card, the house grew strangely quiet. She barely spoke to me. No more loud phone calls with her friends about trips or new outfits. No more constant chatter about plans. Just silence, broken only by her quick footsteps through the hallway or the sharp sound of a door closing. It felt like I was living with the ghost of the woman I had once admired. Then one evening, things shifted. I came home later than usual. Work had run long, and I stopped by a bar with some colleagues. When I opened the door, I froze. She was sitting in the living room in candlelight, wearing one of the expensive dresses I had bought her back before everything fell apart. On the table, wine, her favorite appetizers, soft music playing from the speakers. "We need to talk," she said gently, almost in a whisper. I sat down across from her, saying nothing. "I've been awful," she began. "I know. I said things I shouldn't have, about marrying down, about being out of your league. I lied to my friends, pretended I was paying for trips that you actually funded. I was ungrateful. But you have to understand, I only did it because I wanted to feel valuable. I thought if I didn't put on that image, I'd have nothing." I studied her face. Was this honesty or just another performance? She took a sip of wine, her voice trembling slightly. "Let's start over. No more lies, no more games. Just you and me. We were happy once, weren't we?" I let out a slow breath. "Once, yeah. But the problem is, now I know the truth. And I can't unknow it." Her expression faltered. "You're really going to throw everything away? Our marriage? Years together?" "I'm not throwing anything away," I said calmly. "You destroyed it yourself when you decided appearances mattered more than respect." For a brief second, I saw the anger flash in her eyes, but she quickly put the mask back on. "Think about it," she whispered. "We could leave. Go somewhere new. Start fresh. I promise I'll change." But that promise sounded hollow. Familiar. Empty. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I opened the folder from my lawyer and signed the papers I had been holding off on. Divorce. The weeks that followed were a storm. She begged. Then she screamed. Then she begged again. Long texts accusing me of betrayal, followed by tearful apologies. Phone calls in the middle of the night asking for one more chance. But none of it mattered anymore. I had already tasted freedom. Court was quicker than I expected. Since most of her lifestyle had been funded by me, she had little to stand on. Sure, some property had to be split, but the majority remained mine. After the final hearing, she stormed out of the courtroom without looking back. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Months passed. I moved into an apartment closer to work. My evenings were quiet, simple, reading, playing guitar, meeting friends when I felt like it. No tension, no eggshells, no fights about money or status. I realized I hadn't just left a marriage. I had reclaimed my life. I rarely saw her after that. Occasionally, I'd stumble across one of her posts online. The flashy handbags and trips were gone. In their place, posts about learning independence and being strong after a toxic relationship. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel smug. I just scrolled past. Then one day, we ran into each other at the grocery store. She stood in line with a basket of cheap items. When she spotted me, her face went pale. "You look good," she said, forcing a smile. "Thanks," I replied. "You too." We exchanged a short look, and I realized something. It was over. Truly over. No more bitterness. No more attachment. Just a shadow of what used to be. Looking back now, I finally understand her words. I married down. I'm out of your league. She was right, but not the way she thought. Yes, she married down. Down in respect. Down in honesty. Down in integrity. And me? I climbed higher. Higher than her lies. Higher than her arrogance. Higher than the version of myself who let someone else decide my worth. The most satisfying part wasn't her friends abandoning her or her fake image collapsing. The most satisfying part was realizing that my value was never tied to her approval or to anyone else's illusions. I was always in my league. I just finally stopped playing her game. Epilogue. These days, I've started dating again. Slowly, carefully, no rush, but with one rule carved deep into my mind. Respect is not a bonus, it's the foundation. Because money can be earned, status can change, even reputation can be rebuilt. But respect? Either it's there or it's not. And if it's not, no league in the world makes up for it.